Welcome back. This week, as we get into springtime in Northeast Ohio, we have reached the Torah portion Shmini. Shmini means the eighth. Now, we're familiar with eighths in Judaism. We have Shmini Atzeret, the eighth day of the Atzeret. We're not quite sure what Atzeret means, but an additional eighth day at the end of Sukkot. We know about 8 days of Hanukkah, which is related to Sukkot. And of course, we know about circumcision, which most properly or most beneficially will happen on the 8th day of a young boy's life. And of course, in the modern world, we have many families where there is an 8th day welcoming ceremony for a young girl as well. In this case, the 8th is an interesting issue because it comes after the 7 days, the more familiar number in our tradition, of the ordination of the Kohanim, of the priests. And last week's Torah portion ended with the statement that the Kohanim were to engage in a 7-day period of ordination and consecration, and during those 7 days they were to remain at the entrance to the Ohel Moed, to the tent of meeting, also known as the Mishkan or the tabernacle. And at the end of last week's Torah portion, we read, Vayas Aharon uvanav et kol hadavarim asher tziva Hashem b'yad Moshe. That Aaron and his sons, the newly ordained priesthood, did all of the things that God commanded them through Moses. And that would make a nice 7th day, like the 7th day is Shabbos, nice round 7-day thing, and we would be done. But the very next verse, the first verse of this week's Parsha, says, Vayehi bayom hashmini kara Moshe laHaron uvanav uleziknei Yisrael. On the 8th day, Moses called Aaron and his sons, as well as the elders of Israel, and they commenced the sacrificial system. Now, why does it have to specify the 8th day that Moses called Aaron and his sons? Weren't they already there through that 7-day period? The difference is that on the 8th day, the Ziknei Yisrael, the elders or the senior members of the household of Israel, were now included as well, kind of the council or the legislature of the people as best we understand it. And so the 8th day here takes an interesting significance. It's the same significance as it has for the 8th day of a young child's life and the 8th day Shmini Atzeret following Sukkot. In these 3 cases, the 8th day, the whole week, the Shavuot, the 7-day period that we're familiar with, plus one more day, indicates not really the 8th day of something that's just passed, but the 8th day is the first day of the future. It's the first day of what's to follow. When we have a Brit Milah, when we circumcise a young boy or welcome a young girl on the 8th day of his or her life, what we're celebrating is not that the fact that the child has lived through one full week, although we're certainly glad of that blessing, but what we're celebrating and acknowledging is the entire future that we hope and pray that that child will have. On Sukkot, we have a 7-day traditional festival, plus an 8th day, Shmini Atzeret, that's in the Torah. Why? Because that was the day after the whole High Holy Day period that the Israelites would go back to their homes from Jerusalem, and that would start the new year. And so that was the 8th day after the holidays and after their repentance and tshuva and celebrating, they now looked to go forward into the future, into the year that was ahead. And even Hanukkah, the only festival that we have that's 8 days long by itself without that additional 8-day like Shmini Atzeret, even Hanukkah points us to the future. We know from our history, especially if you look at historians such as Elias Bickerman in his book Ezra to the Last of the Maccabees, that while the Maccabees and the celebration of the 8th day of Hanukkah is a celebration and a rejoicing over the restoration of our autonomy and our temple, the truth of the matter is that Hanukkah is the celebration of the historical events that led us down the path to the rabbinic Judaism that we practice today. So Hanukkah as well was not talking about the past, but in fact talked about the future from its own point of view. And so as this week we read Parshat Shmini, we understand that our Judaism is not supposed to be just a nostalgia trip. It's not supposed to be something of our ancestors, of our childhood, but it's supposed to be something not just for 7 days, but for the 8th day and for all of the days of the future that follow. Have a great week and Shabbat Shalom.